Hello there, team, and welcome to an update on the volcanic situation going on in Iceland. Today is December 21st. It is 11:15 a.m. here in Idaho, 6:15 over there in the evening in Iceland. I'm Geology Professor Shawn Willsey. Thanks for joining me. Be sure you subscribe and like to the channel if you like the content I put out. I'm just a geology professor trying to promote geologic education and giving my spin on Earth processes as best I can. So let's get right to it. So the good news is that there is no lava erupting currently at the surface. There's a few glowing spots, incandescent spots on the flow field. You might be able to just faintly pick out a few of those here in the live webcam view. It's obviously nighttime and also cloudy there a little bit, but those faint little glows you can see on the bottom left camera. Looks like there might be one in this top right view as well. Those are all just little spots glowing still on that lava flow field, but there seems to be no longer any additional lava working its way to the surface. So that's great news for our friends in Iceland, especially the residents of Grindavik. And other good news for them is they've been allowed to return to their homes and go into the town, at least for the foreseeable future, between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. So really good news on that front. However, the caveat to all this good news is we still do have some evidence over the last couple of days since this eruptions began that there's still magma inflation taking place beneath the region around the power plant. So that's something to be aware of. So by no means does this necessarily mean that we've got this thing completely over, that this eruption is completely ended. And this is where, the human aspect is important, because it's human nature to say, well, there was all this excitement and then it erupted and it was spectacular, and now our tendency is going to be to let our guard down. And I would caution that we need to still watch this thing. It warrants monitoring. It warrants giving it a lot of attention and diligence, because we could very likely have another eruptive event in the very near future. Within possibly days, but definitely weeks or months, we could be seeing another eruption here. So let's, as we always do, let's look at some of the data first, and then we'll look at some of the news articles and other things that are going on. Thanks as always to Amanda Joe, our boots on the ground person there in Iceland and a resident of Grindavik, for all the information she provides me that allows me to do this. She sends me a lot of articles that helps me understand what's going on. She also is helping me with my Icelandic pronunciation, so I really appreciate that. This is from one of the local news agencies, and this is some drone images that they compiled from yesterday of the volcanic field, and I think these are worth kind of looking at here. So I believe we're looking to the south there. That was towards Grindavik. So we'll watch this for a bit here. And while we're watching this, I want to make a quick announcement that tomorrow, which is Friday the 22nd, I'll be doing a drone flight from my chair here in Idaho. I will be remotely operating one of the drones operated by the company Nature Eye at 14:30 local time. So that's 2:30 in the afternoon in Iceland, or that would be 7:30 a.m. here Mountain Standard Time. But I will be flying over the eruptive site. It's actually pretty cool, because if you were with me last Monday before the eruption, I flew a drone close to the region with the Nature Eye drone, and this was hours before the eruption took place. Now, of course, we didn't know when the eruption was going to happen, but that's still a pretty cool, that was just a really cool opportunity. So what will be neat is to compare those two flights that I'm going to make, and I'll probably take more or less the same path, although I think I'll stick around this eruptive site much longer than I did on Monday, and just compare and contrast things a little bit. And to maybe whet our appetite for that, I've got some images here from Siggy Anton. So he was generous enough using Facebook to let me share some of his photos, and this is from a fixed-wing aircraft. And so he's got some nice photos of the flow field. And this is looking to the north, so Grindavik would be below the view here. The hill over here on the left is Silingarfelt. The road is just on the other side of that. And then we can see the older Sindnuksgiga. I think I'm getting that better, Amanda. row of craters here, and then the new ones are largely mimicking that. But we can see the the new flow field. Um, Beyond the black, which is obviously the lava, you can also see a region where the snows recessed or moved back a little bit, presumably from the heat, maybe from some of the downwind bits of ash or gas that have burned or melted off some of the snow in that region. So just a couple photos that he sent here, um, showing the same view to the north. That would be a view. That would be a view to the south or southeast. So Grindavik would be down here. There's the harbor with the fishing harbor right here. And again, remember the lava flowed further to the east. So whenever we see these images, just kind of look for where the lava seems to be, you know, advancing further from the craters. You can also see in here, and we saw this a little bit with the drone footage, but you can see where it's steaming a little bit still and gassing right along the vents that were located close to this older crater row. So some great photos here from Siggy. So thank you for letting me use these. That would be a view to the east down along the coast. So again, there's the we had eruptions up here. This is the Stora Stogafeld hill, and then we can see the older crater row, and this was largely mimicked, at least in part, by this eruption on Monday night. So a couple great photos there from him. So thanks, Siggy, for letting us use those. He also sent me a couple of photos from previously. So this is what the area looked like before it erupted. And he didn't send me a date on this, but this would obviously be before this past Monday, and obviously without it snow covered. So again, that old crater row looking down towards Grindavik. Similar view there, just to kind of get us a view of that topography. Yeah, and then we've already seen those there. So thank you for that. Very helpful. Let's look a little bit at the GPS data, and this is the place where I think things are a little bit concerning. And so again, I've walked you through this several times, but quickly, this is the elevation of the land near the Svartsengi power plant. So we have a GPS station set up there. It records the elevation, I believe, every 4 hours or so. And I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of viewers, Bruce Garner and Dr. Limbach in Germany. They gave me a tip on a link to get the 4-hour data. So this looks maybe a little bit more busy with more dots, because previously I was using a graph that showed every 8 hours of data, and they sent me the link to get the 4-hour data. And I'll include this in the video description if you want to look at this as well. So more data is better than less, and so this actually shows every 4 hours, you know, so that would be what, like six times a day, we get data points. And so here is the uplift occurring in late October, meeting a climax at November 10th when we had the magma system move off to the east into the dike. We had all the earthquakes around Grindavik. The town was evacuated. And then since that moment, November 10th, you can see the steady accumulation. Well, the data points showing uplift, which we interpret as a steady accumulation of magma over that period of time. Gap right here in the data, I'm assuming that's maybe weather related or something else, but still the trend continues. And then we reach this past Monday when we actually had the eruption. That dropped the elevation back down because we were ejecting a lot of that magma onto the surface. But now if you look at just this last cluster of data points, there is definitely a slight upward tick here. And so there does seem to be an upward trend. And again, we'll have to see how this looks in a couple of days moving into the Christmas holiday. But if this continues, I mean, I think right now it's definitely suggesting that we have magma inflation beneath the power plant region. And if this continues upward, that will just sort of support that notion. And then we'll have to see what happens going forward. But it seems like a lot of the Icelandic scientists, and I would concur just based on this data, that the possibility of another eruption in the next few weeks is there. Like it's definitely a possibility. And so so this indicates, yeah, that it's reinflating, and that's presumably due to more magma moving into this shallow subsurface magma chamber, and the gases, the dissolved gases in that magma, causing the pressure to increase. And we know that the trigger point for the magma to do something, whether it was to move to the east as it did back here on November 10th, or as it was the case on Monday to erupt, is right about this elevation here, right at the high point of these, or close to that. And so we'll have to see what happens if this trend continues once we get back to that point. So a couple of news stories that Amanda Joe sent me that I wanted to send to you here, and that kind of caught my eye. So a story that seems to mimic what I just said. Magma accumulation seems to have started under Svartsengi, and they basically go through the same thing we just did, that they've got good evidence that there's magma accumulating again. This is Christian Jonsdotter, the volcanic head of the Met Office, and she says, I'm quite afraid that we're looking at such a repeated process where magma accumulates in Svartsengi and then magma flows occur, lava. And time will only tell. It's just a question of how long the magma accumulates and whether the magma pressure will be enough for this to result in an eruption. She also points out this fissure has not erupted for over 2,000 years, and so we're getting to know this system and learning how it works. And I think that's an important point as well, that we have not seen this area erupt. This older crater row here is a couple thousand years old, and so, you know, to some degree, even though volcanism in this part of the Reykjanes Peninsula is similar overall, there oftentimes is nuances and some subtleties and some behaviors that occur within a given volcanic system. And so this is a different location and possibly a little different behavior than what we saw over the last 3 years with eruptions in this area over here to the east. So we've got a lot to learn is the point I guess I'm trying to make. Some people get frustrated with science at this point, and oh, the scientists don't know what they're talking about, and they can't tell when the volcano is going to erupt. And please just realize how difficult this is, that it's difficult data to obtain. You're looking at things happening kilometers below the surface, so we have limited tools at our disposal, even with all the technological advances, to glean that data. So it's difficult data to get, and it's still indirect data. You're not really, we're looking at surface uplift as a proxy for magma inflation. There's just no way to stick a thermometer down in the ground at that kind of depth, and really, or camera, and really tell what's going on. So it's indirect methods, but it's the best tools we have at the time. And so a lot of it is looking at behaviors of, you learn from your mistakes, you learn what you did well, you learn what you might have improved upon, and then you wait for the next volcanic event and you apply those lessons to that event. And over time, ideally, we get better and better at predicting the behavior of the system. And then I wanted to point out as well, let's see what I have here. Let's see, where was that at? Oh, here, this is what I wanted to get to. Maybe I skipped ahead a bit. So yeah, let me actually go back. I'll come back to that one in a minute. Apologize for that. So let's go look at the Met Office update as it is. Make that a little bit bigger for you. So this is the latest update from their public scientists and officials. So no eruption activity. However, it's possible lava flow is in closed channels, meaning that, remember that lava can flow beneath the surface. So you can have lava moving even though the surface looks black and solidified. Rock is a really good insulator, and we can get lava moving beneath the surface in what are called lava tubes. So there's an entire system of and method for lava to move through the subsurface where you can't see it or detect it at the surface. That being said, because the topography is largely pretty flat, and because the vents don't seem to be putting much output or completely done in terms of their output, I suppose, it's likely that's not happening. But just remember that as a bit of a caveat. So the seismic activity, we'll get to that in a few seconds here. It appears the craters the Sunduku craters have extinguished, but it's not excluded that the lava flow is still closed in channels. Seismic activities decreased. Um, yeah, not much gas, but the degassing of the lava bed is going to the southeast now to sea. Um, yeah, so they're just going to keep evaluating things as they go. There's no maps that they put out. The lava flow map I've showed you in previous updates, that's still valid because the lava flow really didn't expand much. All the extent of that lava that we've seen, like here, that pretty much happened in the first 24 hours or so, and maybe even the first 12 hours when it was really active initially. So it was an interesting eruption in that it was pumping out so much lava initially, and at that time we didn't know how, could it sustain that amount of lava? Oops, excuse me. Or was that going to dissipate? But it dissipated quickly. I mean, we went from this thing really pumping out quite a bit of lava in terms of volume on Monday evening and into the early hours of Tuesday to, a day or so later, it pumping out very little, just a couple of vents squirting out a little bit of lava. And now here we are essentially on day three and a half, I suppose, and it seems to have ended, which is a very kind of rapid progression. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this eruptive cycle is over. This is just possibly a lull in the activity and things could ramp up. So looking at the earthquake data for the last 24 hours, similar to what we saw yesterday in the update, mostly smaller quakes. I think all of these are below a 2. Let's see if that's true. Yeah, so these are all below magnitude 2. If we look at just the last maybe 12 hours, you can see the data there. Most of the clustering around those 2 eruptive vents, and then a little bit off here to the east. Again, nothing I would say is alarming, just interesting and something to maybe keep track of. Last 4 hours, pretty much just the 2 vent areas that have now kind of dwindled down. So we'll have to check the earthquake data moving forward and see if there's anything revealing there. Let's see, a couple of news articles. So from this mbl.ice site, this is one of their volcanology professors, Professor Thordarson, and he considers the eruption to be over. Yeah, so you can read this as well as I can. He says, it was strong initially, but it ran out, and somewhat similar to what we saw earlier this summer at Litlihurtur, where it erupted with quite a bit of vigor and volume initially, but then it dropped down quite quickly. And he states here the magma is coming up, clearly comes from the same deep chamber as the magma that came up from Fagradalsfjall, so the eruptive site to the east from the last 3 years. But instead of coming straight up, it went into a magma reservoir at shallow depth, 4 to 5 kilometers under Svartsengi. So what he's saying there is, in those last 3 eruptions, the conduit system was pretty much straight up and to the surface, but here it came up, pooled for a period of time, about a month or so, I guess, in the area around the power plant, and then it finally found a way up to the surface. So a couple interesting articles there. Another one here from the same news agencies, undermining the prevailing theories about the Reykjanes Peninsula. Let's see what I find here that was interesting. Yeah, one system rather than, so the same professor here says in an interview that the magma is therefore all of the same stock or composition, despite the fact that Fagradalsfjall on the one hand and Svartsengi on the other have until now been considered separate volcanic systems. Quote, I'm starting to think that it might be better to see the Reykjanes Peninsula as one system rather than many different ones, he says. He previously questioned the prevailing theories about the division of the peninsula into as many as 6 different volcanic systems. So what he's talking about there, and I found this kind of interesting, let me make this a little bit bigger. This is from, I don't want to block it too much there. There you go. So this is from, let me make sure I get the source here. This is from the Icelandic Institute of Natural History. And all the numbers on here are different volcanic systems in Iceland. And down here, there's numbers up here on the map, and those correspond to the list here. And they've got the volcanic system name, notes on it, what the central volcano is, if it has like a main eruptive vent like some of the big ones do in central Iceland. But what he's saying is that on this peninsula, we've usually divided it up into spatially several different systems. So there's the one down at the tip, the Reykjanes tip here, southwest tip of Iceland. That was considered one system. Then you have the area around Grindavik and Svartsengi. Then you have the Fagradalsfjall system, and then the Krýsuvík system to the east. And then maybe it's a little easier to show it all here. And let me take out all the crazy notations I've made there. That might help a little bit too. But if you just look at this overall, let me take these out real quick. If you just look at the topography and the age of the rocks, so on and so forth, you start to delineate several different systems. And let's even take off the roads. Let's just take it all off. There you go. So, you know, one system in this region here, you can see these craters and this alignment of volcanic features here. Another one around Grindavik here, that would be one. Maybe the Fagradalsfjall system, you know, volcanic system there. Then you have this really prominent one here in Krýsuvík, this system. And then you can kind of just keep moving to the east and looking at topographic features, looking at the ages of the rock. And of course, there's gaps in between them, usually filled with lava fields. But what he's saying there is it might be, rather than treating these as separate systems, as if they aren't going to interact and are going to operate separately, maybe we should be looking at them as one cohesive system where that magma plume's coming up and maybe just feeding different systems, and sometimes feeding two different systems more or less at the same time. And I think we are seeing that to some degree with you know, these last three eruptions here, and then the most recent eruption over here in this area. You know, these three obviously are pretty spatially close, and they're aligned along that southwest northeast trend. This though seems to be the anomaly, and so you'd think it might be a different system, but it could actually be a very similar system. So interesting article there. A little more of the human aspect of things here. So they've started working in Grindavik, and they're basically saying that, hey, we should be able to open this town up for the most part after, you know, into the new year pretty quickly, and they might be ready to have residents move back in and put things back to normal. You know, the water pipes, the infrastructure, but of course that would be somewhat predicated by what happens with the volcano. So this eruption just ended, or has lulled in terms of activity. We don't know what will happen moving forward, but they're making preparations, and they should. You know, I agree with this, that we might, if we can open this town back up, maybe put together some better evacuation plans, have a better hazard assessment system in place, then, you know, we can get people back into their homes. Maybe there's a better alert system and everyone knows what to do in case that things escalate quickly. And so, but that's good news. That's good news for the people in Grindavik. And then finally here, this last one, this is just more maybe for levity than anything. I always love the translations when the stories are in Icelandic, and then Google Translate puts it over to English. So it's too early to declare the end of soda. Yeah, and my wife would agree with that. As someone who enjoys her Diet Coke every day, she would agree with the let's not declare the end of soda ever. But of course they're referring to eruptions. Too early to declare the end of the eruption, but that's the way the translation went. So I always find it funny. Sometimes you just see, as an exclusively English speaker, you sometimes see these little words that pop up that just kind of make you giggle a little bit. So that's all I have for you for today, friends. And so hopefully that was helpful, gave you some information for today. And remember, I'll be doing a live stream flyover with the Nature Eye drone tomorrow morning tomorrow at 14:30 Iceland time, or UTC, which will be 7:30 a.m. here for me in Idaho. The plan, as far as I'm made aware of it, is we're going to take off from the same parking lot or car park as we did last Monday morning, and we'll be able to fly over this region that just erupted. And so we should get a nice view of the flow field. I'll point out anything that I can along the way, and I'll be at the controls. So I am not a good drone pilot, so you'll see it. If you're expecting a nice cinematography experience, then you probably shouldn't watch, because it'll be a little herky-jerky. The camera will go up and down, but it'll be me. And the cool thing is I'll be able to remotely operate that drone from my office here in Idaho, which is just, to me, that's pretty amazing, the technology there. So that's all I've got. Have a great day. Hope you're well, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Appreciate all you're doing to support the channel. Like, share, subscribe. All those things are helpful. Just promoting geology education to the masses as best we can here. So take care, and we'll see you soon.